Welcome to Licensed Psychologist Now What? A podcast about the journey psychologists and psychotherapists go through as they reclaim their intuition and unleash their healing gifts while maneuvering getting licensed, life, and making a living. And although this podcast host and many of the guests are mental health professionals, the information provided is not meant to be a substitute for being diagnosed and treated by a licensed mental health, medical, and related professionals, or for supervision and/or consultation purposes. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Licensed Psychologist Now What? This is your host, Diana Garcia, and today I have the honor and privilege to introduce to you Anjuli Sherin. Did I say it correctly?
You did. You did.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And Anjuli, I met her via Instagram, just like many other psychotherapists. And it's something that I really enjoy. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist in New York. And I met her via Instagram and we've been like communicating back and forth, which I feel like sometimes even for therapists that are doing their things on their own, being connected with other therapists that are doing private practice via social media has been for me like a fresh, oh my goodness, how do you say the fresh breath of air?
That's
And
right.
yes, so I'm so happy that I'm able to connect with psychotherapists across the US and recently also across the world. So thank you so much, Anjali, for showing up and wanting to be here in this show and sharing a little bit about your story. So I wanted to welcome you.
Thank you, Dr. Lydiana. Yeah, it's such a pleasure to be here. And likewise, it's such a pleasure to see your posts on Instagram. And just like you, I mean, to connect with a world of therapists and healers who are starting to do different things, and to grow and learn from that because it is rare and it is such a solitary practice, right?
Yes.
Majority of the time spent in our rooms with our clients. And so, yeah, it is
Yeah.
fun and necessary, I think, to connect in these ways. And thank you, social media, problematic as it is, for creating an avenue for that kind of connection that probably wouldn't have happened otherwise. So glad to be
I
here.
I know it would have taken like going to maybe a conference in East Coast for you to come to a conference around here and still that doesn't provide that much of that space.
That's right. So yeah. And I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, actually.
Oh my goodness, San
Near
Francisco.
you.
Gosh, so sorry.
No, no.
Yeah, so
Uh,
California.
yeah, California. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, gosh, what do I want to share about the practice? So currently, I'm a psychotherapist in private practice in the San Francisco Bay Area, and my specialty is individual therapy and group therapy, and has been for over a decade plus. And then I'm also an author of Joyous Resilience, which is a self help and psychology book that basically takes all the learnings from my individual and group therapy work with clients over the past 2 decades and talks about what it takes to be joyously resilient, which seems like an absolute oxymoron during this time of all the things that are happening pandemic wise globally, and then all of the systemic injustices that are right up front as they should be and in our faces here in the US. And it really speaks to, yeah, how do we stay joyously resilient in times like these? And especially if we come from various different marginalized groups in the world. And that journey is an individual therapeutic journey, but it's also very much leveraging our power to shift systems in any way possible. So that's some of the gamut of what I'm up to right now.
Yeah. When I saw your book, I was like, I need to buy it because it has the word resilience. And my other podcast is the Beyond Resilience Life. And I'm very much about it. And what I love was the joyous part because recently I've been really focusing on after processing trauma and all those things, what is next? Because that's not the end goal. The end goal is how the joy has been taken away by all this trauma, pleasure, fun, all those things have been taken away and have been put on the back burner because to survive, you get so focused in like that hyper awareness here and now or well, it's not necessarily here and now, but like very focused on survival that all those extra things are extra and we're not paying attention. And it's really hurts me to see when people are able to process their traumas and all that, and maybe they're not getting triggered, but they're still not exploring the importance of joy, pleasure, fun. So when I saw that title, I was like, this title in itself is genius. And I loved it. And also the front page and the colors. It was very much into that aspect of joy, which I'm recently very much into it. So thank you for bringing that book into our world and for offering your knowledge and talking about your book. How was that for you? How was that writing a book? Because that's not a class. As far as I know, I did not take a class on how to write a book in school.
Among many other important things that there are
Right.
not classes on in therapy
Yes.
school. Yeah, I want to just back up for a second because I think it was so beautiful what you said about like joyous resilience and why it matters and how in the therapeutic journey often that's a step that isn't covered or isn't included. I name that because when people have asked me about this, I've actually said literally what you have said. Like the reason why it came into joyous resilience was in my own therapy journey. I found that I had kind of worked through a bunch of things, and yes, I was more resilient in terms of I knew my boundaries, I knew how to speak up, I was feeling much more calmer in my body and mind. But it was true that nobody had asked me or thought about with me, like, well, what brings you alive? Which for me, joyous resilience means really an aliveness. What brings you alive and what brings back beauty, pleasure, creativity, fun, play, silliness, like all of these things that are signs of health. How does that come back? And that perhaps sometimes, and it did, sometimes it comes back because our minds are calm and we've done our healing journey and traumas have been processed. But a lot of times, actually, it's a skill that has to be cultivated, especially if it got cut off really young because it was dangerous to express it or because it wasn't modeled around. So I just wanted to just share that because when you said it, I'm like, yeah, that really matters. Joyous resilience matters and having it be a part of the therapeutic journey. And I would say, not just as a goal, like, once you've healed all the trauma, whenever that happens, then you will, but actually more as like from the get go to be asked, you're here because you probably want to feel more alive, even if you haven't said it that way. Even if what you've said is, I'm feeling so depressed and I don't really know. I'm so anxious. But on the other side of that is, I want to feel alive and at ease in my body and able to express whatever it is that's deeply inside of me. And that is joy. And that does take.
Mm. This is so important. And I'm even thinking my school and my preparation, my supervisors and all that did not even talked about any of this. We talk
Mm.
about processing childhood trauma or, based on whatever model we want to use, change his thoughts, explore narrative, all these things, exposure therapy. But we don't necessarily like I did not take like a class on how to help you feel more alive and how to help others feel more alive. And that's part of the human experience that even as psychotherapists, we're not even learning.
Yeah, or being reminded, right, that like what is innate to us, I also want to say, like as if, because that feels like also a bit part of that Western model of like you will have to take a class on
Right, right.
accessing joy, right? Which is like, yeah, sure. I mean, I think learning in all forms, wonderful. But also just the pivot to tell me about, right, in your life or in your culture or in your history or around you, what did spark? Well, first of all, how do you even know what joy feels like in your body, right? And we do know whether it's that smile on your face or the warmth in your heart or that little delight. Like, how do you begin to actually understand and feel in your sensation what joy is to you, what it feels like, and then what elicits it that may already be there, that it isn't something that has to be given. And then, yes, a whole buffet of starting to come back to. Oftentimes, I think it's a coming back to, though sometimes it might be a really just a opening to something completely new. But I think for a lot of us, right, like somewhere in there, there can be, even in grievous trauma histories, right, when we ask trauma survivors, like, well, what helped? Like, how did you survive this? And oftentimes, the things they point to are the things that also contain aliveness, like nature or a pet, right? Or that one friendship, or books or fantasy, or I drew, or the music that I listened to get away from my parents. And I just like dance in my room and I listened to music and I sang, right? These are all very healthy ways of connecting with aliveness. And in the end, can weave you back into joy. So, but yes, like, it's just like having that as a framework, really, to go, we're here to bring back aliveness and joy, and that it's necessary, and that it's not a luxury or some afterthought. It is why we're alive. It's why babies are here. It is why, like that present, that is joy. It's just pure aliveness. And then it can be directed towards doing really wonderful things in the world by simply being you, you know?
So important because I'm even thinking you mentioned it's not to put it to the side like an extra thing. But even our society, how it's built in that way. You work hard to then play hard. I hate that phrase, but that's how it's embedded with, many other systems of oppression that are participating in it. But yeah, that cultural idea of, like, once you're no longer a child, then you're not necessarily, like, you have to, even as a child, you have to earn
Yeah.
the right to have fun and
Yeah.
to feel alive. So how was that for you? Because it sounds like it's also like you share that in terms of, well, you're in the US, and I don't know about your, story in terms of your family and all that, but how do you, like, grasp the importance of that? How was that moment for you that you're like, "Oh, wait, we're missing this?"
Yes, yeah, thank you. And I will answer the question about the author as well. I know we kind of went into
Yeah.
some really delicious and fun tangents. So, well, one I forgot to say. So, I am I'm Pakistani American licensed marriage and family therapist, and I grew up in Pakistan. And I came over when I was 18, and my family still lives there. So I kind of straddle that as well, and I bring that into my practice, what it is to be of both worlds, and what it is to really also be kind of like here and have your family somewhere else, like when your heart is in two different places. And I work a lot with migrants and immigrants. So I think the nice thing about growing up in Pakistan, and of course it just also depends upon, like, I think some of this could be across class levels, but of course class does play some factor in this. Like, how much access do you have to leisure? But I think as a culture, generally, though again with class added, I think there is more permission for leisure the way I grew up, and there is more emphasis on like time with family or time to be. And sometimes I would also joke that, like, I mean, the thing is, there's not that much to do, especially again if you're born into female body in Pakistan. So it's not as if there are like so many classes and so much, that you're gonna go do and spend your time. So we did get to be home as children. We did get to be with our family or just with our siblings, and not have a bunch of things that we were going to, like
Right.
dance and and this and that. I mean, it was there, and I think that's very important. But I do think it was useful that for a lot of my life, I got to have extended periods of like just being at home and reading, playing outside on the street, sitting in the garden and like family and my sisters, and like learning how to be. And that there was nothing not worthy about that. That actually that was like it was considered worthwhile, and it was part of like why you're here. And so I think that really went deep, like deep, deep inside of me. And I have noticed that in this culture. I noticed that with my friends in this culture, like how much more permission I have to like, sit and have my cup of chai each day, which I do after work, and have my biscuits and have my chai and like cream and all. And I'm so grateful to not actually feel any guilt. I'm really, really grateful to have that. Like, and understanding how rare that is and how sad that is that we cannot be one exquisite gift of a life, which I don't know if will come again. I want to look at the trees outside. I want to like listen to the rain falling. And some of that comes from in Pakistan, right? Like again, lack of so many things to do. The weather changing is an event. Oh, the weather is changing. Let's get in the car and go get a chai and some picoras and like listen to music and be with this. And that's family time. That's being time. That's pleasure. To me, it was also poetic time and creative time and dreaming time and like a way of feeling good in my body and knowing that that was not far away, right? Again, of course, being mindful of trauma, DV in families, all kinds of things that will make that an uneasy time. And I have my share of that too. But there's still this thread of wellness going through that goes somewhere in there. One can feel good in one's body inside of the simple things. And that's deeply reassuring and healthy and joyous. And I think that memory, that body memory and tactile, stayed with me through my journey of healing. And that was a part of my work with clients. That was a part of, I think, what became a part of the book. And I want to segue into talking about the book, but I just want to see if there's anything you wanted to share because I see
I'm
you.
no, I'm just here, like, thinking how this American culture is built to promote disconnection.
Mm.
Because when you were talking, I was even remembering moments in Puerto Rico when, because I grew up in the mountainside, and and
Oh,
my
beautiful.
parents were not taking me to, like, dance class was Saturday, but not through the week. I would just get home, and yes, I would sit
Yeah,
down and see the lightnings because I love seeing the lightning and
yeah,
stuff like that, and that for me was an event.
yeah.
But over here, I mean, when I moved here, also, I grew up in Puerto Rico. I moved here for my internship. it was like, you have to keep going. You have to sit down and yeah, you can watch TV some, at night, like right before
And
going
there
to
wasn't
bed.
that much on TV either, I have to say.
Right. Right. Yeah, no. But yeah, this culture is made to disconnect and then you want to connect back to nature, but you feel like you have to have all these things and we keep buying more things to connect or let's buy candles and I'm also talking to myself, let's buy essential oils, let's buy this to kind of like just sit down outside and just be.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I mean, I have to say, and I feel it. My heart also goes out to so many of us in urban areas where, like, isn't that easy? I mean, again, how are cities designed? Do you have access to a park? We look out your window, do you see a tree or like, or not? Like, why it
Mhm.
takes so much work, right? How much of your time is spent commuting because you cannot afford to live
Right.
in the city where you're giving all of your time and your energy. And so looking becomes hard. And I mean, I think even though we're inside of these systems, when you're sitting with a healer or therapist, again, another access point, if you have that grace, or if you listen to this podcast, what I want to say is like to remember again, even just to ask yourself, like, what would bring a little bit more ease right now? What would bring
Mm.
a little bit more calm? And even if it is that when you're on that commute and you look out and you see the sunset, colors change and you
Yeah.
recognize it as a moment that has value. I think that's the other
Mhm.
piece, right? Like when you saw the lightning, you probably didn't think of it. I mean, I didn't think of it as a child as like this has value. I just knew that it moved me. Like I knew, but I also knew because the adults around me were looking at it and going, ah.
Mm. Mhm.
And so to find the pleasure in the moments and to look for it and to recognize it as that. And then if you have your kids in the car and you're taking them around, then maybe you point it out to them or you put on the music in the car and you sing together. Like, how do we take this back
Mm.
in these small ways, even as we think about whatever power we have to make maybe bigger changes to shift what the culture is saying and also what like
Mhm.
capitalism is saying, right? The system is asking us to value versus what we value. It's a
Mhm.
very long and interesting big discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's so important, and I wonder how was it for you when you moved then here? Was it like a little of a cultural shock of people like, the go, go, go and not pausing, and did you ended up also going through that process yourself?
Yeah, think. I mean, it is funny, like how much like nature nurture, right? Like I do
Right.
think that there was a part of me that did buck it quite a bit because I mean, I just was coming from a different base, And like I said again, some of that thing that like because it had been permission so much, and I think there was some deep knowing of like it's okay to pause and rest. It didn't as much. It could have, I also, because of that, I mean, I chose a program or a college campus that was quieter. And I chose somehow intuitively, classes that were smaller. And so I think some choices I made helped that. But of course, right alongside it was all the stuff around, competitiveness and perfectionism and what grades are you getting and like how well are you doing. So there's another way they can insidiously come in around what are you achieving, which could have turned
Right.
into more, more, more. In my case, I think what it turned into and what I had to heal was like a decade plus of like very useful training and workshops in my own work, which was it was very useful and it definitely set me up. But at the end of that decade, I remember like me waking up with a joyous resilience was like, oh my gosh, like what else is there? Like I don't want to go to another workshop anymore. Like I want to take this stuff and like build a life where now it's in my life, right? That I'm feeling alive and joyous. I'm not having to go to a workshop in order to feel aliveness or joy or connection. And I think that was a really good pivot. That was back to like what brings me alive here and now. Also, what brings me alive beyond my career? Very obvious question,
Yes.
but I think I just have not had time to ask that because I really was in personal therapeutic journey and I'm going to be a therapist, I'm going to build my practice. And as you know, it takes a long time and
Yes.
all of these things. And then it was just like, hang on, what? I was trying to feel stale, even though I had all of this great work I'd done. And it was from that I had to ask again, like, well, what makes me alive? And it took me back again into like when I was a child and being like, oh yeah, I used to like to write poems or oh, I like to dance and I've not taken a dance class. I didn't take a dance class in college or I took one because I was afraid that it would affect my GPA. You know what I mean? That like
Mm.
I like that the sadness of that like I did get cut off from joy. out of the fear of that, who are you? What are your grades? What are you going to achieve? And sure, I got the GPA, but nobody talked to me about, number one, why in the world is this about GPA? First of all,
Right.
what is it shifting about your choices, and what you're actually would have opened to if that had not been on your radar? And so then it was a number. The past decade has been a lot about like, who else am I? And how much that like brought my therapy practice alive, not even because of a direct correlation. Some, yes, waking up to joy totally shifted a lot of what I was talking about in therapy, but mostly like I was just more alive as a human being. And that matters. It doesn't matter because it doesn't matter if it's because we're a mother or a partner or a therapist that we get to come alive. It matters because I'm a human being, and like I get to come alive for myself. And then it does have positive impact outside. And that's actually a roundabout way of answering how the book came about, right? Because out of that journey of writing and then being like, oh, okay, I love books. I've loved them since I was a kid. Like, honestly, it's more like the fantasy dream of like, in a bookstore, my book is there. In a library, my book is there. And like or the joy of being a writer, like all of these silly things of like, having like a writer's room, and what am I going to wear when I'm writing my book? And like, it was like a child playing. And in that was also the clinician and the human being and the work I'd done. All of that came together to like let me birth a different part of me and also be of service. And I think it was really, really good. It was really good to have something else that was mine and another way to express. And kind of like long-term relationship, I've been in a long-term relationship as a therapist, and it has ups and downs, and it's a honeymoon period, and then you go away. To fall back in love or to sustain the long-term relationship as a therapist that I practice, I had to do what many partners have to do. I have to go and find other parts of me, and like keep that alive in order to keep this thing. Otherwise, I think I would have really burnt out. So
So many different nuggets and places to go with what you share. And I love how you mentioned the aspect of writing the book, because from my colleagues and friends that are writing the book, and I've thought of it, but I'm like, that sounds like not joyous.
then it's not on the menu right now. Then
But how you mentioned that even like the play and getting dressed to write your book, I would never have thought of that. That sounds so fun. Or even like I went into like, ooh, renting like an Airbnb in the mountains and dressing up and doing this
oh
sort of things.
yes,
Yeah. So
absolutely. That book was written on trains, planes, on different continents before COVID. Like I was like, I'm gonna have a life. I'm going to visit my people. I'm going to travel, but I'm also going to include this. And that made it so much more easy, you know. Yeah, because it was actually kind of a pleasure. It just kept being like the fantasy life of a writer in a way to trick my mind into. I mean, I am on a train and I'm typing right now, but hey, we're going to a beautiful new place, and I am this writer who does this. So there's lots of
mm,
playful ways to get through big
yeah.
things.
No, it's a beautiful way of seeing it. Like it's not a reframe just for a reframe. It's a different way perspective of seeing it and bringing. And also, I'm here thinking that aspect, like what you mentioned about like being a therapist is like this long-term relationship and not to burn out, how you go and explore other things. I think that is so important. I've been hearing a lot of my colleagues feeling burnout, especially the ones that are working full times and stuff like that. And right now with COVID, it makes completely sense. But this is also a time like that. Like, what other avenues and interests can you go so you can get rejuvenated and get back to that sense of aliveness? What got you into this profession? Because many of us come here so hopeful. Like, we have this gift. I'm going to help all these people. I'm going to change kind of the world, starting small. And then you go into the day and day and you're like, whoa, this is really hard. And I don't feel alive. I feel at the end of the day dead. And so I love that idea of going, venturing out, exploring other things so that way you can come back and feel more rejuvenated.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for bringing that. Like you're naming something really important. And I can really feel everybody listening. And I just want to say to everybody listening, like last year, probably for like a lot of us, last year was the hardest year in my, about 18 years of being in private practice. Like, because of just everything that we were going through, especially I think if you were a therapist in the US, but probably other parts of the world as well. There was just so much to hold, right? And it was happening to us 45 minutes before you enter into session, and now I'm holding space for everybody else, but I haven't even processed what just happened today, politically, environmentally, right? Like all of it, systemically, personally. So I think this could be, and maybe when we do our IG and we talk about questions and stuff, I think that it's a really important discussion to also talk about, yes, aliveness and yes, doing things and all of that, but also practical things that you can do in your practice. And one very practical thing that is hard often to access, which is rest. Like, how do you actually switch off? And it's not about doing something more, though that can be very generative, but really to do less, right? And like, for me, just to tell everybody, after that book came out, it came out early this year, immediately I felt the pressure, even before it came out. Right? Kind of like maybe like a mama giving birth, right? Well, when's the next baby? Or like, well, when are you going to be
Right.
divorced? Or well, now what? And to really be able to go, the truth is that like I have given birth to something, and though I know there's more, I cannot find in me the next fruit. It is enough to grow in doing podcasts and like speaking, which is an edge. But like to actually realize there was nothing more. Like more is coming after 9 months have gone by and I'm still not ready. It's like I know that more will come, but to be able to say no, even when it's scary and I feel the scarcity of like, oh no, but like time will go by and who will wanna, want this or you won't be able to teach this. And it's like it doesn't matter if my body is telling me back to that sensation, like you said, you have to stop now and you have to just restore and do less for a while in whatever way that's possible. Sometimes we can't put certain things down and certain
Right.
things I couldn't put down. But how do we? And if you are a therapist in private practice, I mean, it can be easier in some ways. Like you can design things, and that's a plug for that. It takes something to do that too. But wherever you are in an agency, however you're doing it, how do we claim some things back for ourselves? And a lot of the work that I do with clients and in group is about getting that back. And what a lot of the book talks about is cultivating those parts of you that can nurture you, but also protect you to set the boundaries that help you reclaim your aliveness.
Mm, yes.
Great conversation. I'm like,
Oh my goodness. I
you and
know.
I
I
can
can.
now have it with someone. It's
I'm like, that's the title for this podcast, Reclaiming the Aliveness for Therapists or something like that, because it is. It's you lose it. And then I've been also meeting with some colleagues that are also caregivers, whether with small
that's right.
children, elders, or and losing parents and
That's
losing loved ones.
right. That's right.
mm, And and then we still show up because capitalism and we have to pay our homes
Exactly.
and food and yeah, it is so hard. I feel like I can go on and on, but as we're looking at the time, let's go into the fire round questions. So this is like finish the sentence. My unique and special gift is.
Presence,
Hmm. I am reclaiming.
belonging,
Love that. I no longer subscribe to.
someone else's version of what aliveness is.
If my ancestors would speak, they would say.
Free me
My wish for you, meaning the audience, is.
to know you're unconditionally loved and to be free, free to be who you are and to rest.
Hmm. Anjuli, this has been such an amazing episode. I'm here like taking it in, even thinking like right now as we're recording this, I know you'll get it later. It's in a full moon. So like
Oh,
going
yeah.
outside tonight and just sitting outside and walking in it. And that's the piece that, got me back to just enjoying that without, even if it's 5 minutes,
Even if it's 5 minutes,
even
even
if
if
it's,
it's 30 seconds and you look outside your window wherever you are. Yes, yes. And to
yes.
go, here
So,
we are. What a marvel that we are here looking at this.
oh, yeah. And how many other people are looking at it at the same time? I like to go that in terms of connection as well.
Mm,
So as we're approaching, can you let us know where can the audience find more about you and contact you and all the good stuff?
absolutely. Yes. And I know that you'll probably have links and stuff with
Yes, it
wherever
will be
you're
here
listening
in
to
the link.
this. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so if you'd like to connect more, which I love, one, the book is available everywhere, though I always encourage you, if you have a favorite indie bookstore, purchase it there. And please do tag me. And you can find me on Instagram and show me the pictures of you reading it and what happened. Also, there are 9 free guided meditations that should be linked in either other of these. And those meditations guide you through the voices inside that are going to allow you to connect with that joyous resilience and permission yourself to nurture yourself and to set those boundaries and to go out and look at the moon when it's time. And
Mhm.
available for free on my website. Just follow the link. And that will also connect you to my newsletter, which will invite you to groups on joyous resilience and working individually together. Yeah, and just I love to connect. So do write in and share what's touching you from the podcast or the book. And thank you so
Mm.
much, Dr. Lydiana, for having me. This was a wonderful conversation.
Yes, thank you for saying yes for the calling and for sharing this very simple yet super profound, important
Yeah,
lessons that everyone, not only therapists, are being
everyone.
told to do,
Yeah.
especially right now, especially with the transition that this world is taking to come back into presence, into aliveness that will help us. So, thanks for coming. And for the audience, you all the links are here below, so you can find that. I would definitely say go and get the book and get those meditations. I'll be looking for the meditations as well. I didn't know about the meditations.
Mhm.
And I look
Yeah.
forward to connect with you down the road in a different way and for IG Live or something. So,
IG Live.
yeah.
Yes, bring your questions, everybody. That'll be fun to connect with people there very soon.
Thank you again. See you next time.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks for listening. Licensed Psychologist Now What? To make sure you don't miss any episode, make sure to subscribe via your favorite podcast player and to join our email list via our website. Lastly, I will appreciate if you would rate and review our podcast to help us reach more folks that can benefit from the information provided here. Until next time, bye-bye.